Hi. Okay, so we're at our last class of this series, and all of the recordings will stay up, so you'll have access to them through that portal, your account. Before we get started, any questions, observations that you want to share, insights?
No, it's just all making sense now. Like all the back pain and everything, like totally makes sense. Because there's like this succession of how it's gonna start
Mm.
and the things that rise, and I never connected them all.
Mm.
I was just
Mhm.
like, once my back got to that point, then I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But there are all these other things
Yeah,
that are happening.
right.
So now it's like, okay, now I can recognize and do what I have to do, whether it's pull back or stretch or rest or ice, heat, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, makes total sense.
great. I mean, great that, there's so many things in our life that there is a succession,
Yeah,
and we don't have the luxury of seeing all of the steps that take us to where we are, right? But there's a lot of power in knowing where you are. And there's a lot of power of seeing the pattern arising, because at any point in that pattern chain, you have something that you can do that can either, well, acknowledging it is actually huge. Just
Yes.
acknowledging it, going, oh, wait, I see this happening again.
Mhm.
And then deciding, recognizing that there might be a way that you can lessen the impact.
Yeah, before it gets to that point where you're in it and that's it.
Right.
And just letting it escalate. I
Mhm.
think that it's good to know where I can start seeing the subtleties.
Mhm.
Because there's always little things going on.
Yeah, it's like I say this a lot in teacher training or just in back classes and Psoas classes. People will say to me, I don't, just all of a sudden my back went out, I sneezed.
Yeah.
Right. Or I picked up a piece of paper from the floor and my back went out. I have no idea where it came from. And I never say liar, because the truth is they didn't see it.
Yeah.
But then in talking to them further, it's like, oh yeah, I had an accident when I was 6, and
Yeah.
I rode horses and I kept falling off the horse. And oh yes, I lost my job and I haven't worked for 16 months or something like that. It's not out of nowhere.
No.
It's only out of nowhere because we don't always know what leads into our pain. And once we're in pain, it's very, very hard to make the right choice.
Because you're only making the immediate choice that's going to make you feel better in that moment.
Right.
Not that it's going to help long term.
Right.
So it's like, you try everything.
You're trying everything. And then we tried everything.
Yeah, but we really
haven't. We've only tried the things we know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Or the things that somebody told us, but we haven't tried everything. I had somebody come in, she's like, I've tried everything, because she went to a doctor and the doctor said, do this, what are you going to do? Shots, which always seemed like, whoa, that's the highest thing, right? If you get a shot, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Or, it wasn't to the place where they were talking about a hip replacement. That's probably the highest things. And actually those generally work, for hip pain, but she tried everything. And she's looking for a miracle, and it was some fascia work, and she walked out a different person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Nobody was as surprised as I was. But here the doctors are, and I've had that happen numerous times, and people said, the doctors say I can't do anything for you. And
because they're only thinking,
they're thinking medical.
They're
not
looking
thinking
and they're looking at the
else.
one thing.
They're looking at the one thing, and they're not looking at everything else. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. If you're going to somebody who has that narrow view, because that's what the training is. I mean, let's face it, doctors do a lot of training, and they do a lot of training in one thing. And somebody was even saying to me, is like, if you ask your doctor how much training they've had in nutrition and how that affects your health, they're going to say 0.
Maybe a little bit, the newer doctors. But still, nothing that they really should have.
Yeah, and there's so much that you can do with nutrition.
Yeah, and they just spew out the standard stuff. They're not telling you anything specific or different.
And
Unique
it
to you.
depends
I
how
feel
open
like-
their mind is.
Yeah,
If
I
you
feel
talk
like-
to someone, even, a doctor with an open mind, and they'll listen if you're coming from a different, perspective.
Yeah. I was at a doctor appointment with my dad last week at his cardiology appointment, and my dad's 96, so,
Oh, wow.
he's got his issues. And she was a very young cardiologist and very thorough and really good. And, he's having some issues. His heart's not pumping as best as it could be. And she's asking him all these questions and, asking him how much sodium he uses and all that stuff. And he goes, well, I'm 96.
Mhm. That about says it all, right?
So he's kind of like,
Of course his heart isn't pumping the way.
yeah,
He's earned that.
yeah. He's
Yeah.
just like, I don't know, what do you want me to do?
Would you like to know what year I was born? Yeah, you're right. He's
But she's
96.
real young, she's coming in
And she
with
was
a
being
personal-
incredibly thorough, and I can appreciate that. And I'm sure it's also a liability issue that they want to make sure that they've checked every box and they're looking
have
at
to.
everything. And
Yeah.
but he was just, and she was like, yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar thing when I stopped having menstrual cycle. They're like, oh, we have to do a sonogram. And then I was like, I'm 55.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Isn't this
Isn't that what
normal?
you're supposed to do?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, but there can be blood buildup. And I'm like, what?
Oh,
Yeah.
I've never heard of
So-
that. God.
I know, it was just a way to get, I don't know what it
Another
was,
test done.
another test done.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of things that we can do on our own. There's a lot of responsibility that we can take if we look at, and like you said, the uniqueness of our lives.
Yeah.
And the uniqueness of your father's life is that he's 96
Yeah.
and he's still walking around and he wants his heart to continue to pump.
Yeah.
So yeah, the uniqueness of our own life, all of the elements that go into it, that not only is a doctor not going to ask, but we're not going to reveal, like the people say, I just sneezed. And it's not until maybe 3 sessions in that we find out maybe they had a car accident, or
Right.
maybe there was something big that is still affecting their back or whatever. So it's sometimes stuff that we don't even think about or remember that is part of the picture. So there's a uniqueness to each of us. We're all built differently. Everything that has happened to us is imprinted in our body, is imprinted in our muscles. And so we have to be an active partner in understanding what's happening and watching that cycle of when the psoas tightens up.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit actually today about more what's going on in your brain in relation to your psoas. And I got this really nifty app for teacher training that I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to literally share my screen.
Can I just share a really quick story?
Yes.
While she's doing that,
Mhm.
because it's very visual to me. I went to a PT who just always starts with working on your head, and she does her little thing, and she's doing this. She goes, "You fell." No, I didn't. I haven't fallen. She's like, "You fell." And then I thought about it, and I had right before that, I don't know how long before that, but not, pretty recent, been down in Hilton Head, and we were biking on the beach. And I got
Biking on the beach?
on the beach, yeah, but I got into the soft sand and came to a dead stop, and there was an infant in front of me with a woman, and I almost hit the infant. And so, I made sure to really catch myself, and I did fall, and I had gone forward and not hit my head on a hard surface or,
Right.
maybe on
So
the
it didn't register.
handlebars or whatever.
Yeah,
But then I said, "Oh, you know what, you're right, I fell," but in my mind, I didn't even think about
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
fact that that was a fall, and yet she was
Isn't that-
able to pick up on
To
that.
pick
which
up on
is-
it, yeah.
was amazing to me
Mhm.
that,
yeah,
she had the training and the intuition
yeah.
and thought outside the box to
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we discount a lot of things, a lot of
Yeah.
injuries that have occurred to our bodies, our minds, and our hearts. We discount them. But they all have a part to play in what's going on with us.
From the beginning, from the
From
time
the
you're
very
born,
beginning,
depending on
yeah.
what your birth was, was like. And then what you did as a child, you could take it way back.
Yeah, you could take it way back. You could take it, if you really want to, you could take it to other lifetimes.
Yeah, that's beyond me.
Okay.
I gotta deal with this lifetime.
Is this an app that you have for teacher training?
Yeah. Oh, God, make it bigger this way. Oop. I'm trying to make it bigger. work better when my son was here. Maybe I can't make it bigger. Oh, yeah. Yeah, not that much. Okay. But you can see, right? It's a big enough screen.
Mhm.
Okay. And you can always come closer. Oops. All right, so what I wanted to show you was the Psoas in place. We're gonna get rid of these because none of us have those. Just like that. So you see this big white here is the abdominal, the fascia over the abdominal. I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna take away some of the fascia. And we're down to the rectus femoris you see on one side. And now underneath, you see the fascia. I'm sorry, the psoas, wrong workshop. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't think I have a pointer with this, do I? What's this? Oh, that just makes it male or female. You see where the diaphragm is, right, in the rib cage, right? And you see how the psoas runs from the diaphragm down, and I'm going to take away some of the muscles here. There's your pectineus, your rectus femoris, and some of your adductors. Yeah, now you can see out, I'll move it up, where it attaches right to your inner thigh bone. You see that little piece of tendon down there?
Yeah.
And if I take this away, which are some of your back muscles, now you see it even more. And where you see the white, like kind of like a fang, that's the psoas minor. So you see it only goes to the front of the pelvis. It attaches kind of a small tendon right down there. And I'm going to turn them around. So now you see it from the side. And remember, we were talking last week about it going over the fulcrum of your pelvis. If you turn your tailbone under, it lifts the fulcrum up. I don't know if you guys saw the recording. That's the fulcrum. You see from the side, if that white bone that's going from the pubic bone to the hip bone, if that pushes up, you are going to stretch the psoas more, right? Does that make sense? And then what you see in the inside of the hip is what lines the inside of the hip is the iliacus, and that goes down to where the psoas is also. See some of your back muscles. There it is in all of its glory. Right at the lower, the greater truncator, which is that bone that sticks out before it goes like this, right? That's when people break their hip. It's usually between that round thing and the bone. Oh, get rid of those little things. And then from back, because that's where it affects a lot of people, right? I'm going to take these out, which are spinal muscles. Oops. I don't know what I just took out. I think it might have been something important. Oh, vertebrae. Let's try to put that back in. Oops. Okay. No, didn't put it back in yet. All right, well, let's just pretend it's there. But you see how it attaches to the side, the spinal processes of the vertebrae? So it is having such a direct impact on your vertebrae. And when I was
The
saying,
psoas, right?
the
We're
psoas,
talking
yeah.
The psoas.
that muscle that I just got rid of, that's the quadratus lumborum, and that gets blamed for a lot of psoas issues. Oops. So you've got, now you got it on this side too. We're still missing a vertebrae, but just fill it in with your head. Yep, we know we're missing 2 vertebrae. So imagine if one side is tighter than the other, how it's going to start to pull on these vertebrae unevenly, side to side. Sometimes there's a scoliosis here. And so one psoas is going to be working much more than the other, right? Because it's already pulling these spinal processes together, which is causing the curve in the low back. And if you are, because we had this question once already, if somebody asked about sitting crookedly, if you're sitting crookedly, let's say this sit bone is higher, and that psoas is not working as much, the other side is just going to try to pull everything back into alignment. Okay, so we want to remember that's what the psoas is doing, is trying to pull everything back into alignment. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. And there's some.
Did you used to have posters for this, Bonnie, before all?
No, I would do the same thing, which was I would put things on, just pull up pictures from the internet. I just want to see if there's an animation that shows a vertebrae, the psoas rather. And then my son just hooked up, aside from giving me the tablet, he also hooked it up to the TV so I can show it.
Oh, wow, big screen.
Yeah, big screen and recorded.
What's interesting with the crookedness, my son dislocated his hip,
Mhm.
and we came to find out later that the stronger side was the side that dislocated because the weaker side just gave in. But
Right,
so
right.
what you're saying with it tries to compensate.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
So that's the psoas working in hip flexion. Oh. I'm taking right back to the psoas. No. Yes. Okay. Trunk flexion. Oh, this is what I was talking about, the sideways. Okay. That's a shame it doesn't go right back. And let's look at external rotation. So that's when you turn your toes out, when you turn your knee out. And we'll get one more, which is, well, this is nice to see. This is what that little muscle does all by itself.
Interesting.
And it does that, it's a helper muscle, but you see how it doesn't go to the thigh bone. So it's not lifting the thigh bone up. And it's such a thin little thing. It's got also the abdominal muscles are helping, but remember when we were trying to disengage the abdominals, so that we can especially work a little muscle like that. Femur flexion and trunk flexion we'll get. See how it's stretching on that side when it goes over the pelvic lip? And every time you take that thigh bone back more when your trunk is upright, you're still going to be stretching that muscle. So while it is not a hip extensor, which means it takes your leg back, it does play a part in hip extension which is if it's tight, you're not going to be able to take a big step back. You're not going to be able to take a big step forward because you won't be able to bring your knee up, and you won't be able to take a big step back because the shortness of the muscle is going to limit that. Now, so we looked at this, I think one time, right? The vagus nerve and all the things that it influences. And the vagus nerve is running right near the psoas. So I'm going to say it's hard to separate it, but I think people know how to separate it. These are all the different parts of the brain that the vagus nerve is innervating: olfactory, smell, vision, eye movement, what's happening with your face, your sinus and your jaw, what you're hearing, the muscles of the throat, the internal organs, the tongue movement, and the muscles of the head, neck, and back and upper back. Of course, doing a lot more than that, but these are our sensory organs, right? And this is how we project our face into the world and how we're also taking in the world. And we also see it affecting all of these other parts, all the really important things. And here it is in this yellow line coming up and going into the hypothalamus, the amygdala, and the hippocampus and the thalamus. And this is all the limbic system. So what's the limbic system? The limbic system is contains those parts of the brain that I just mentioned, and they are it is primary in your emotions and how you react to stimulus. You can think of the amygdala, the limbic system, almost like the smoke alarm, right? So you've got a fire in your house, a smoke alarm goes off, it sends an alert. But it also goes off if you have a if you burnt the rice, right? It goes off. It could go off if you're burning incense. Let's see, get out of there. So the fire alarm will go off, the smoke alarm goes off even if there's not really a fire, right? Just like our amygdala is going to go off. Our limbic system is going to go off even if there's not something that's really threatening. And what happens when the limbic system goes off? It starts to excrete hormones that bring back the fight, flight, or freeze. So adrenaline, cortisol. Oops, let's come back here. So the amygdala seems to modulate all of our reactions to events that are very important to our survival. They warn us of imminent danger and a very important stimuli, but also the events that signal the presence of food, sexual partners, rivals, children in distress, and so on. So it's doing all of it. It's what keeps us perked up and responsive. So here it's going to result in accelerated heart rate, dilated pupils, increase in metabolic rate, increase of blood flow, and it allows us to respond appropriately to danger. What muscle is the first muscle that's going to respond to danger?
Running.
The psoas. The psoas. The first muscle that's under our control. Of course, the heart's going to start to beat faster, but the psoas is going to respond. So if you think back to the first class, fight, flight, freeze, faint is all action of the psoas. Hip flexion, freezing, the psoas constricts, the breathing stops, all metabolic functions stop. So while that response to danger is going to directly affect the psoas. Now, here's the thing: that's our on switch, but where's our off switch? Who knows? Who knows where our off switch is? You ever see that Simpsons? There was a Simpsons a really long time ago where it was like evil dolls, one of their Halloween specials. Even if you don't watch The Simpsons, I haven't watched it in years. It was an evil Halloween doll, like those terrible movies that have
Oh,
dolls.
Chucky.
Yeah. So it's an evil Halloween doll, and it's going and it's doing all these really horrible things. It was one of the kids, one of the two kids, and the other kid went, wait a minute, and pulled up the shirt in the back, and there was a switch that said on off, and it clicked off, and then the kid was just the kid again.
Yeah.
So like, what are we gonna do about this evil child? And it's like,
Well, it
just
was only
turn
that
off the
simple.
switch. If only it was that simple. But we do have that switch. We do. It's called tremoring,
Mhm.
right? Or it's calling anything that you do to de-stress. Okay? Anything that you do that can quickly de-escalate the situation. So here's when you're talking about that circle that of patterning, this happens and this happens and this happens. If we insert into that circle at any time the thing that we know, our favorite technique to de-escalate the situation, our Psoas is going to stay unlocked.
Mhm.
So until we see that cycle of escalation, we're not, first of all, we're not going to be able to de-escalate it. It happens really quickly. But in saying that, it also happens slower than you think. It happens very quickly, but you can still catch it when you're looking for it. You will never catch it if you're not looking for it. So start to look for it. See if you can feel your stomach getting hard. A really, really good sign in this escalation. Anybody know a good sign for themselves?
You mean
Okay.
as far as when, like,
You're gonna have to start looking for those. When you are escalating, you know that it's getting to a not a great part where you're gonna start to
Mhm.
fight, flight, or freeze. What happens in your body that's saying, "Ee." And if you don't know,
Mhm.
start to look. But a good sign in our bodies is that our tongue gets really hard.
I was going to say very dry mouth for myself.
A very dry mouth.
Yeah,
Okay.
very dry mouth,
Mhm.
and I just mentally just start saying, you gotta get a hold of this.
Yeah.
Like in my head. I'm
Okay,
like,
so dry mouth is a
Yeah.
good signal. Sometimes we feel our feet getting cold, cold feet. We've heard that, right? It's not only about getting married. So our feet might get cold, our hands might get cold, our hands might get sweaty. We might feel it in our stomach. A lot of people feel it in their stomachs or their chest are tightening. But your tongue going, and you can see it on people's face too. So remember the limbic system, I mean, the vagus nerve is operating all of these things too. Your face is going to look different. Your eyes are going to probably dilate, things like that. You might see, we have the saying, seeing red. You might literally see red or metaphorically see red. You may freeze, you may be a freezer. So you start to get heavy and immobile. So start looking for the signs for you. What happens when you're challenged? And it could be different things, like something's going to challenge you that's going to make you see red, something else is going to challenge you that makes you collapse. Okay. And if you start to see those signs, and then you know there's something that you can do to de-escalate, you all have practiced tremoring before, so you all know that. And even if it's something that's just like you're sitting and you just tremor a little bit and you can discharge the situation. Your body is wanting to naturally do that anyway. But those of you who have done a longer tremoring class know that we shut that part down because it doesn't look good, doesn't look, we look weak, so we don't let ourselves tremor. But if you feel like your body just wants to shake it off, go ahead and do it. You would never tell your dog not to do that. Not that they would know what you were talking about.
No wonder I naturally tremored after the birth of all three of my children. Like it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I had no control over it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was obviously my body's way of
exactly
preparing me for the next lifetime of who knows,
I have a theory that if they had women tremor after they gave birth, there'd be a lot less postpartum depression. Because where's all that energy going? I mean, that's one of the most traumatic things that can happen if you're still awake, right? And if as giving birth, right? And being born, by the way.
My doctor, I had the same doctor for the first two, and the first time you know, I was so elated, well, you're so happy when it's over, you know, plus now that you can enjoy what just happened. And he's like, Barbara, calm down, cause I was like, they had to take my daughter away, like her app card was a little low at the time. So I was getting excited and, you know, and I remember like I'm shaking and I'm trying to talk, he says, okay, stop talking, stop. But I was, you know, I guess the shaking was a good thing.
Shaking was a good thing.
Yeah.
David Berselli tells the story about being in an indigenous society somewhere in Africa, and they explained to him the way that they allow births to happen. So they have two women holding the woman who just gave birth, holding her up, and the third woman catches the baby, and the two women are hold her until she finishes shaking. Like they don't consider the birth process complete until the woman finishes shaking.
Mhm.
Yeah. Whereas my midwife told my husband to help me to hold my legs still,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So so that's a really important discharge because you're just holding it all, right? And you see that with people who've just gotten into accidents or coming out of shock, they tremor. We see it with people who are coming out of anesthesia. I was going to say amnesia, but I don't know if that happens. Is that they tremor. So if you know tremoring to be something that helps to ease your nervous system, it could be walking, it could be jumping, you know, it could be people smoke a cigarette. I don't think people do that anymore, but maybe somebody does, you know, something that helps you to discharge the effect. You may be able to break the effect of that spiral of things starting to tense up. If you feel your stomach starting to get hard, or you feel yourself starting to get sick or nauseous, different nausea than Trish, what you described, that's something coming back up. But going in, if it's settling in, then try not to let it settle in. See if you can do something to break it. You can do the exercises that we went over last week. In fact, somebody else told me who's in the class, who's not here today, said that they had the best sleep that they can remember after we did those exercises. So I said, okay, do them every night. You know, you don't have to do all of them, but do the ones that you can do at night and see if that's consistent. And it makes perfect sense to me because we stretch the psoas, we contracted the psoas, and as we're doing that, it's releasing a lot of its tension and it's telling the brain you're okay. It wasn't in this class, but when in the fascia class, when you are moving the fascia in such a way and softening it as we're trying to soften the psoas, it goes to a part of our brain called the insular cortex, whose job it is to tell you you're okay.
Mhm.
And then you can sleep. You can't sleep if you are not okay, right? If you're thinking like, I'm not okay, something's wrong. Why would you sleep? That's not what the body is designed to do. It's designed to keep you safe.
Well, the joint frame series works for me if I do it at night because you're kind of like moving in succession. You're starting at the bottom and then working your way up, and you're just moving everything.
What did you call it?
The joint frame
Oh,
series.
okay.
It's really, I think it's great.
Yeah, it is.
It just, and it's just like little subtle movements. It's not like it's, you know, you're jumping up and down and
No, you
anything
can do it
like
all
that.
laying in your bed.
Yeah.
I do something like that, you know, with the guided meditation.
No, this is actually
This
movement.
is actually movement. I mean, and you do your feet, you do your legs, your knees, you do your arms, your elbows. Like you're moving everything, your hands.
Yeah, some things we're going to be able to discharge through visualization and meditation, but some things we're not. Some things we actually have to get up and move the body, and that is the body is holding it. It's manifesting in the body. So the way you'd want to get out of it is to move the body too.
You do a joint, that's eventual, that lesson will come along like that.
Yes,
series.
that series will come along in the new year. Yeah, but anything like, you know, jumping rope or walking outside, or, you know, doing something repetitive usually is a good way of discharging the body, of discharging the stress and calming things down. Right. So we say count to 10, right? We say, let's take this outside, go walk around the block. You know, we already have the sayings and we just think that they're just kind of throwaway sayings, but they actually mean something. They mean go walk and discharge what just happened or what is about to happen.
And you got to get in there while you still can reason with yourself. You know what I mean? Because if you don't,
right. Once the nervous system takes over, it's too late. It really, really is too late. And it's hard for us to understand that after the fact, like, why did I behave so badly? Well, take out the I there and say, why did my nervous system take over? Why did my nervous system? Now it's mine, not I. Once you're in pain, your nervous system is going to take over. Once you're really afraid, your nervous system is going to take over, because that the limbic system that I show you is holding all of the things that have frightened you. And when the smoke alarm goes off, those things are going to come out, and the way that you saved yourself the last time it happened is your brain's going to say, do it this time again, and you will. Or if you haven't figured out a way of saving yourself, you're probably going to resort to the most primal way of saving yourself, which is needed sometimes, right? There's a reason we still have that in our bodies, but it's not needed if you just burnt a piece of toast. You know, if you burn a piece of toast, you just burnt a piece of toast, you can discharge in another way. But just know all of this goes back to the Psoas, which is affecting how are you going to walk? How are you going to sit? How are you going to breathe? How are you going to digest? How are you going to eliminate? How are you going to sleep? In some cases, probably not for us, how are you going to procreate? Right? Because it is going to affect that as well. So I've never talked to an acupuncturist about this. So I'm going to make a big guess. When women go to acupuncture for fertility treatments, they're probably working on the vagus nerve.
I went for, yeah,
For fertility.
for fertility, yeah. I didn't get pregnant again, but I stopped getting sinus infections, which was
Okay.
great.
All right.
But yeah, acupuncture is really, I was kind of like, when I went, but I didn't want to do IVF. So I just tried it, and it's
That's interesting.
it's really
You get pregnant,
interesting
you stop
how,
getting sinus
you know, you think
infections.
it's like, oh, I'm going for fertility, so they're going to put the needles all around here.
No.
They're looking at your tongue, and they're checking these, what are these, the whites on your nails?
Yeah, the cuticle. They're not the
cuticle.
cuticles.
They're looking at that. They're checking all these things that you're like, what are you looking at? You know, but I don't know.
They're looking for the whole system.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about with doctors or not. Like the acupuncturists will look at your father and say, how old are you, sir?
Yeah.
That would be
yeah.
the first question. Like,
Yes.
how old are you, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, you're 96. Okay, so that changes how we're gonna approach this.
Mhm.
So they're looking at the meridians in acupuncture follow very closely the fascia lines in your body. So they're doing studies on that now, and they're finding like between the muscles where the fascia is the most prominent, that's usually where you're getting stuck. So they know the fascia, well, they wouldn't call it fascia lines, they call it meridians, but that's what it is. Yeah. So so we just want to think of the psoas as not just a regular muscle in the body. It's not like your quadriceps where you could just, okay, I want to strengthen them. You have to treat it with being conscious of the energy of it, the less about the tone, like the strength of it. Like you would never say, how much can you curl? It's to show how strong your biceps are. We don't do that with the psoas, mostly because nobody knows what it is, but we don't do that with the psoas because we're not testing the muscle strength, and we're not necessarily testing the flexibility. I mean, we could test the flexibility, but there's so many other muscles. You saw all those hip flexors I had to get rid of, so you could see the psoas. All of those muscles are going to really be what is going to limit your flexibility in your hip flexors. I mean, you know, like if you're doing a low lunge, those muscles are going to stretch probably before you can get to your psoas. So if those hip flexors are tight, you're not going to be able to stretch your psoas. We talked last week about keeping your legs wide apart. We did that where we pull one knee in, but we had to make sure to keep our foot out and turned out to the side. That was so that it can go into the psoas. So
like yesterday's class, when we were doing this and then back like that, like in my head, I'm thinking, I'm working myself.
Yeah. Yep. So we're not necessarily thinking about the tone and the ability to stretch it. We're thinking about what is the I don't know what word to use for it. What's the aesthetics of it? Is it relaxed? Is it tense? Is it Is the fascia squeezing it? Is it free? Right? Somebody gave me a bumper sticker once that said free your psoas.
Kind of like with fascia too, right? Like, is it, when you really feel fascia, like, how does it feel? Is it smooth? Is it lumpy? Is it, so it, but,
Right, you don't
but
ask
we
how
can't
strong it is.
really touch it like that, like we can with some fascia, right? Because it's too deep, correct?
The psoas, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the psoas is covered with fascia, and all those white lines you saw are all big bundles of fascia. So you want to treat the psoas as like, the angel and the devil that we all like. What do you think? What do you think? We want to have more of a conversation with the fascia than just get stronger or get weaker. So if you remember back to when we first started doing the psoas lift, and I said, if you're gonna find this strengthen faster than anything. Did anybody find
You're not going to find,
this strengthen really quickly?
Mhm.
Did anybody find that?
Yeah, it definitely, it doesn't take long for it to start feeling easier
Yes, exactly.
in different positions too. So even if I do it where I don't like it,
It changes
It
something.
changes,
Yeah,
yeah.
it changes something.
yeah.
So another way that so this is another, I think, big way of knowing that, first of all, we are working with fascia when we do that, but also how the psoas is different. If you were to take a set of dumbbells, let's say 10 pounds, and the first 3 are going to be easy, but the next 3 are going to get harder and harder and harder. I rarely see that with people working their psoas. The first 3 are hard, and the second 3 are getting easier and easier and easier. So look for that in your psoas lift, because that's just a different way of thinking about working with muscles. That's freeing the muscle rather than strengthening the muscle. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I found when we were first working on it, I haven't worked the last week as much. But emotionally in the beginning, it really stirred me up. The first night, I had a really restless night of sleep. Like, and I can't pinpoint what it was, but when you wake up and you just feel like you went through a lot,
Yeah.
that's like, there was almost like an exhaustion.
And when were you doing the work, the exercises? Like, were you doing it in class and then you had the restless
No,
nights?
I
Or
was
you
just doing them at home
before bed?
randomly. It was, it definitely was close to bed because I related my sleep to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually a good thing to see
Yeah.
and to relate. And my suggestion is do it much further away from bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do less of it. It's gonna eventually, and you said when we first started, so you
Yeah.
haven't said it's continued. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
It's correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
It was
you
just that
did
initial,
release.
it was like a
Yeah.
wow. It was like, I haven't done a lot of yoga nidra, but I was introduced to it about 3 years ago after my accident. And in the very beginning, she had us visualize that we were rolling down a hill. And that was the first release I had from my accident, was I went back to the accident and visualized myself falling. And when we came out of the yoga nidra, it was like right in my stomach, right? Like I felt this release. And that was the first time that I had experienced that. And it was so prevalent. It was just like so there. But it just reminded me of what we're talking about.
Yeah. It's exactly the
And
same thing. Yeah.
it was so freeing because I finally could let go of a little of the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. Don't be surprised if, so all that is to say, don't be surprised if when you're working your psoas, some emotions come up. If they haven't already, they may. And it's not, and it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. If it relates to a specific story, pay attention, because it's that work has released something, and there's something to be known, something to be understood from it leaving. It's not about trying to pull it back in. It's not about denying it, but there's something to be known from it leaving, and that's why you're remembering it. So let it leave, observe it, and if you feel emotion coming on while you're working the psoas and it feels like it's overwhelming, stop. If it feels like, no, I'm okay, I can handle this, and maybe you have somebody with you, if it feels, if that feels necessary, and you have somebody with you, and then sometimes it's just easier if you have somebody with you. So, and your body will be different without anybody digging their thumb into your belly. Your body will be different. So Mukunda used to do this Psoas release, and I do it in much longer seminars with people. I'm going to demonstrate it so that you can possibly do it at home if you want to. And you pretty much already know most of it. You're going to lay down and you're going to turn your feet out to the side and you're going to do a psoas lift. And you're going to hold it. And you're going to hold it. And if you have somebody with you, they can actually put their hand on your inner ankle and you push up into it. So you're actually engaging it a little bit. And you hold it until you cannot hold it anymore. And then you let it drop. And then rest. You may have an idea already of which psoas needs release more than the other. I will say it's harder to release it on your own than release it with somebody, because for one thing, you don't have something to push up into. I've done this, like I'd lay under near a couch or something and I push my leg up into the couch.
Yeah.
So you can do it that way. I've done it at gyms where they have those cables, the weights, like the universal machines, and they have a cable that comes down and there's like an ankle thing. And I'll go to that. I have gone to that and done stuff like holding on and done stuff like this. Right. So the cable's pulling with not a heavy weight at all. I'm not trying to muscle build, right? I'm trying to fatigue the muscle so that it releases and then it lets out whatever might be happening. If you are going to do that with somebody and they're pushing on your ankle, make sure to keep your knee bent. So remember how we found where the psoas is? We looked for that little dent. You want to make sure that that's happening. And I would even suggest, as somebody was holding your foot up, that you keep your hand here. So you make sure that that this dent stays. And you might even start to feel it actually in there. And have a box of tissues nearby. And nothing breakable.
Okay.
But you can do that without having somebody helping you.
You can. It's usually not as effective, but everybody's different. Everybody is different. But you can certainly do this raising and lowering or holding. And this is much different than what we were doing here, right? This is mobilizing the psoas and getting it stronger and stronger in that you're bringing more energy to it. And the release would be more like this. And I think I'm remembering now that I've done it with ankle weights on, very, very light ankle weights.
Yeah.
I just have to do this now because I have to even myself out.
Because I was thinking a block underneath wouldn't help because
No.
if you pushed in, because then you're using.
No, then
The
you're
outer
using the back. You
muscle,
want to
yeah.
have it,
But if
it's
you
the
use an
lift.
ankle weight, then you're adding a little bit of.
Yeah, and I would just say if you do that and you start to feel something bad in your back or your knee, stop. Just stop. Phyllis, can I have you lay down on your back with your feet over here?
Yeah.
So this is, and straighten your legs out. I'm just gonna see if this is gonna work. Yeah, so if you guys come around here.
Swing my legs back and forth.
You guys on video just gonna have to
Oh, can I
believe
say?
me. They're not gonna be able to see this. So can you see that this ankle is higher than this ankle? So this is what they go to chiropractors and they say,
I was gonna say that's exactly what a chiropractor does.
oh,
right?
you
Yeah.
have one foot longer than
The
one leg
other.
is longer than the other,
Yeah.
right? And then like, what are you thinking? Like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to come to the chiropractor for the rest of my life. My body is broken. I don't know what's gonna become of me. Just take my mortgage right now, right? I'm gonna sign my house over to you right now. Some people do have one leg longer than the other because they're born that way or because there was an accident. This movement is a lot tighter than this movement, so I can already feel there's Well, we know there's an imbalance. We talk about it all the time. What do you think?
Is it low?
Is it, you feel it's lower?
Yeah.
It's equal.
No, but I mean it lowered.
It lowered.
Yeah.
It lowered.
Yeah.
So what did I do?
You released your
I
Psoas.
released your Psoas, yeah.
Well, yeah,
Was it this side that was?
This side was higher
Yeah.
yeah.
and now it's higher again.
It's a
Don't
stubborn
mess with the good,
Psoas.
don't mess with a good thing, yeah.
Well, moving her like that made a different focus too, right?
And now
Yeah.
she's back into evenness, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
She like that.
Now
This is
stand
the
up and see
side.
if you feel any different.
Well, and this is the side where I get the pain.
Yeah.
Feels nice.
So I didn't have her stand up before, but sometimes people won't notice that one leg is longer than the other. And then when they're even again, they'll feel crooked. And there wasn't really a huge difference for her. Some people I see, you can see like a half an inch or an inch difference in the ankles or the heels, is one leg is longer than the other. And if you notice that about yourself, like you start to feel like, one way to tell is because, you could have somebody pull on your ankles and say, what do you see? It's going to change very quickly, like we just saw. But if you were to do, well, let's see, lie down now. Let's see what her ankles are saying to us now. Okay, they're about even. And then lift this leg up and just hold it. So this is a way that if you're not sure, try to do your psoas release. Are you feeling okay? And then stand up and see if you're feeling different. We can all do that right now. So lay down.
And just stay there till I can't.
Just stay there. You won't go, "Well, you can't. I don't have enough tissues for all." So just choose one of your legs, turn your toes out, take your feet wide apart and lift up one leg. And keep your knee soft. Yeah, a little bit of a bend in your knee. Everybody's back's okay? Everybody breathing okay?
Yes.
Okay, let your leg drop. Relax. Notice if you feel any energy moving or if you feel any tightening or releasing.
It feels looser than my other leg.
It feels looser. Now come up to stand. And one thing that a lot of people can identify, they may not be able to
It
identify.
definitely feels looser than my other
Feels
leg.
looser.
Yeah.
May not be able to identify if one leg is longer or looser, but sometimes it just feels like that leg's a part of you more. It's part of your body.
It just feels like,
Happier.
yeah,
Yes.
good. This one feels like, if I was tight, it would be telling me, I'm tight.
Okay, so lay down and now
I'm
do the other
loose.
side.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Did you feel a difference, Trish? Trish, did you feel a difference?
I felt the difference. I can't describe the
Okay.
difference.
I like that even better.
Yeah.
Well, not
But
to be
what I immediately
hierarchical.
feel is a lot of activity in my upper back and my head,
Mm.
like blood.
In a good
Not
way?
so much on this side, but on the other side.
Okay.
Can't lift this side as much as I can. lift this
Yeah.
side.
And Barbara, you looks like more of a struggle for you too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, like, totally different.
Yeah.
My back is starting to bother me, so I'm stopping.
Okay.
I mean, like, drastically
Drastically
different.
different. Mhm.
What? I can't believe it. This one I could write on.
I think that's why I was,
I
when
felt
I,
like my body was going like this.
Yeah, it was. Come
Yeah.
over here, lay down.
I think when I get that pain over here, it's because I'm overcompensating all the time for the side. that doesn't-
Feet to you.
Come closer. So I'm gonna do just a little bit of movement. This is I was mentioning last week about the fascial release. Again, with the psoas, it goes pretty quick, or it doesn't go at all. So you had it up for a few seconds, right?
Oh yeah, a few seconds, but I felt like I was twisted.
Yeah, she's compensating, so that side of her body was coming up. And there's a little tremoring here, just a little bit.
Mhm.
There's a little tight spot there. Not anymore. You see how it's moving over here? Yeah. So we're getting into the diaphragm a little bit.
Hmm,
How you feeling?
it feels better.
All right, let's lift up.
Oh my gosh,
Much stronger.
unbelievable difference. Still not as good as this one was to begin with, but much better.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we didn't make her muscles stronger, right? We just made it happier.
Happier, opened it up. I couldn't believe that. I'm glad you did that demo today.
Quick, quick, quick. But remember also that as quick as it is to change
Oh,
open, it's
Yeah.
also very
Oh,
quick
yeah,
to go back to
Yeah.
closed or tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it is, if you find a difference like this and like you have to be a little diligent about it. You have to stay on top of it.
Yeah. I have a lot of hip issues, like when you're talking, I completely understand, but just the short time that I've been doing this yoga, on a routine, it's such a difference. Because as I've said, to you, I stopped going to the chiropractor, and that would bring me to go to the chiropractor.
I
Like
haven't
once a
gone,
month.
yeah, I haven't gone in over a year and a half, and I used to go all the time. But it just got to be where I felt like, then I got into a pattern where I felt good for a little while, and I felt okay, and then I started to feel crappy. And I was like, oh, that's all right, because I'm going next week. And then it would start, then I'd go and I'd feel okay until I had that one issue where I did not feel okay after the chiro. And then at that point, I was like, why, something's not right.
Mhm.
Something's
Yeah.
not working.
I was getting into a mindset because my hips were such an issue, and I would go once a month just to
Yeah.
to prevent,
Yeah, well, that's what I was.
But I was
doing.
getting into a pattern in my head, like stopping myself from doing something that I thought might aggravate my hips.
Well,
Which,
see here, that's a really important thing you said, which is, as we were started talking about, you have the power. If you start to see what is starting to tighten up your psoas, because everything from all around here
Mhm.
is going to have some relationship to the psoas. We saw how it is so intimate with your spine and your pelvis, right? So if you are exactly what you said, if you're going to somebody else to fix it, which is only temporary because the chiropractor is putting those bones back in, but
well,
just
because
look how
that
quickly.
mindset is all about alignment.
But it's not only about, it's about alignment, but it's also about, I'm going to fix you
Mhm.
and you are going to fix yourself, right? By observing, by doing these little movements, you have the power in you to make that difference. Now, you didn't have the power into you to do that release that we
Right,
just did,
right.
but if you go home and you do that like every day, I don't know what will happen. You'll have to let us know. So you're a partner in this when you're going to a chiropractor. It's not to just chiropractor. Some chiropractors are great and they do what they're supposed to do. But if you go to a chiropractor and you're just laying there, it's like, fix me. And then you leave and you say, I'll come back next week so you can fix me again. You hear the difference of the balance of power? You've just given the chiropractor all of the power in this, and you don't know what's going on. You don't know what they're doing. You don't necessarily know what their imbalance is unless you ask and they're willing to tell you. I'd always say willing because, like, I know my acupuncturist, he's happy to tell you, but you got to ask. And then he's going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff, and you're going to go, God, I wish I hadn't asked. But he's not going to give you any information unless you ask. And I
Yeah.
understand that's the way of acupuncturists. They don't talk about it too much, but I ask because I'm nosy. So, but if you have an idea, like, I think my psoas is tweaking. I'm feeling it back here. I'm feeling nauseous. Something's going on in here. Only you are going to know what that emotional
Thank
content
you.
is, right? Only you are going to know that. The chiropractor is not going to know that. And some chiropractors are not even going to allow tears on the table. Not because they say don't cry, but because you can't take somebody where you haven't gone. And that's not anything against an individual chiropractor, but I've been to healers, chiropractors, massage therapists who don't understand the connection of your physical body and your emotions. And so they haven't had the experience. So the space in their healing room is not open for that. Does that make sense? That's why when people say, should I go to so-and-so? I said, do you like them? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? Safety is such a big thing when we're working with Psoas. So you have to walk into that room and go, I feel like I can let go here and I have permission to let go. I went to get a massage once. I was about a year and a half ago, and I was not sleeping. I didn't know what it was. I was having panic attacks. I never have panic attacks. I hadn't slept, and I'm like, I've got to go get a massage. It was the only thing I can think of. I knew going to a doctor wasn't going to help because all of my menopausal friends went to every doctor and took everything and nothing helped, right? So I went to this massage therapist, and I was such a wreck. I hadn't slept in like 3 nights. So I was like, and I went to this massage therapist I didn't know in a place I didn't know. And I said, if I cry on the table, I hope you're okay with that. Nothing particular, just I wasn't sleeping. So that's enough to cry about. And he's like, oh, that's fine. Nothing. He hit my hot spot, which when people hit, I usually like start shaking. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. It was a great massage, but it was only a physical massage, and it did not give me the relief and release that I needed. It was so interesting to me because I usually have to hold myself back so much. And if I go to a massage therapist that I know is like, which I don't go to anymore, but I've had the experience of doing that and going like, no, they don't get it. That's fine. That's their practice, but it's not my practice. So I just remember being on that table going like, nothing, nothing. The space was closed down. So because the psoas is so related to your nervous system, you have to feel really okay wherever it is you're going. And that's why I oftentimes will diss physical therapists, because the nature of it is not, the nature of the location is not great. You have a great physical therapist, she's working on a different plane. But you go to one of these sterile environments that smell like rubbing alcohol, and there's people in all sorts of pain and, and accidents, and the physical therapist, you're like, here's a Xerox, go home and do that. It's not necessarily the space for your psoas. Maybe okay for not good for your frozen shoulder either. It may be good for your bulging disc, but it's not good for all the rest of the stuff. So just
yeah, and you've got to regulate that, because I had that with open books, with doing they make you do the open books. So you lay on your side and you go like this, and it was completely triggering my whole nervous system. This is in the very beginning. I would get there, I had to drive there, and by the time I get there, I'd be so exhausted I could just about sit. And then it was just across the board what was being done, but it was just triggering my nervous system in no end, which once I stopped doing those, then things slowed down. And it wasn't even working through it. It was just like my body was just not, my thoracic was not ready to be doing these huge.
Yeah, and that's such a
these
good
are
point.
Huge movements when you think about it. It's like you're coming across your whole body, And I completely understand what you're saying with the massage therapist. I had finally someone put their hands on my back, and it was a massage therapist that I didn't know up in Vermont. And it was wonderful, and I cried on that table to no end. And I'm not very comfortable with massage. I don't do a real lot. I just don't do a lot of it.
It's hard to
But
find.
for
a
me,
good
that
one.
was another one of those changing moments,
Mhm.
like when I rolled down the hill, you
Mhm.
know. And acupuncture, on the
Mhm.
other hand, for me, it was very invasive. I
Mhm.
had
Yeah.
a very hard time.
So,
I'm a
but
wonderful
you have,
acupuncturist, but I did 13 sessions, and we kind of both walked away saying, like, she never said it, but she canceled my appointment, and then she had to reschedule it, and it just went away. And I
Mhm.
kind of went in my mind, this is okay.
Mhm.
Like this,
That's something I've never tried.
yeah, this is just
acupuncture.
not working for me.
So but what you said about it wasn't working through, it was just triggering. That is a nuance that we have to learn. Or if we're lucky, we have a practitioner that understands it, is that there's working through where there might be emotions, like you talked about the nausea against the wall or in some position you're in. That point it was working through, your nervous system was there. You were on track, your nervous system wasn't agitated. But yeah, we think we have to work through it. And sometimes PTs will say, you got to work through the pain, you got to work through the pain, but they're missing a really integral part that if your nervous system is triggered, you're never going to work through the physical body. It's just not going to allow it to happen. So that's another cycle for you to look at, to say, how is my nervous system doing? And usually if you say it's not good, you are going to stop the cycle. If you can address your nervous system, you will be able to stop the cycle. So there's no way of telling when we go into it necessarily if this therapy is going to be right or not. So good for your acupuncturist to go, yeah, maybe not. Yeah.
She retired then anyway.
Okay.
But my-
There might have been the issue. She was checking out already.
Yeah, no, she was amazing, you know. She
It's
was
not for
referred by a
everybody.
friend, She was amazing,
Mm.
but exactly, I just think it's one of those things that was not for me.
Yeah.
I got really claustrophobic, and I was in the room with all those needles on me, and I was like, I knew I couldn't move, and I needed to move, and
Yeah, it's not for
Yeah.
everybody. I love it. I love
Yeah.
acupuncture, but it's not for everybody, and it's not for everything.
yeah, no.
All right. Well, that's our Psoas class.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It was wonderful.
Very
Yeah.
informative.
So keep
Yeah.
it gentle and keep it consistent.
Lots of good info and beyond. Not what I signed up for.
It never is.
I just love that, here I am in my late 60s.